Thank you. Well, it's great to be here again. I was just thinking about on the way down that I think this is my 6th year coming here to share with you. So it's great. I love it. I love coming to have fellowship. And thank you so much to Paul and the worship team for that worship. It was brilliant. Thank you very much. You always know you're blessed when you've got an Irish person in the worship team. You know it's going to go well. So. With that being said, I'm not really sure I sound that Irish anymore, so I'm not sure if the accent's slowly fading away. I'm sure the first time I came, I had to give you a cheat sheet of the words you'd have to worry out for, but I'm not sure they're there anymore. But no, thank you. It's really great to be here. As I'm sure you know by now, my name's Andy, and I am the head of Mission India here in the UK. And we're a mission organization that is seeking to reach all the people in India who have never heard about Jesus before. And part of our mission is to try and put a church within walking distance of every single person. And that means planting a church in around 500,000 towns and villages all across India. And that's a God-sized mission, but we really believe it's possible and believe that through God that we can make that happen. And so I'm going to start this morning. I want to share from the Word first, and thank you for Ian for reading that Bible verse for me. But I'm going to share from the Word first, and then I'll share a bit about Mission India later. And so the verse this morning, the one I really want to focus on in John 14, or the focus of this morning's sermon, is that Jesus alone is Lord. And that's the major focus for this morning. Now, when I was a teenager, I used to go to a church youth group. My parents sent me there, as they would do in Northern Ireland, because everyone just went to church. That's what we did. And so I went to a church youth group, and they ran the group with the requirement that at the end of the service, at the end of the youth group itself, you had to sit for a 10-minute talk. And it was a talk with somebody sharing about the Bible. I'm going to be honest, it was usually pretty boring. Wasn't the best, but you had to sit through it because that was the requirement. I was okay with that. And I remember we were sat there one evening, and they shared the verse about Jesus being the truth and the way and the life. And they talked about the idea that Jesus was the only way to heaven, that only he could forgive sins. And then they went on to compare believing in Jesus like gaining a ticket to go to cinema. That if you don't have the ticket or you don't have the right ticket, then you're not going to get in. And your ticket has to say Jesus, because no other ticket will do. And I listened intently, and for one evening I actually thought it was quite interesting. And I thought, yeah, I want a ticket. I want one of those. I might buy one at some point. And so at some point I did. I gave my life to Jesus, and I thought to myself, great, I've bought a ticket. I'll put it in my pocket now, and I'll just put it away for safekeeping. Because a ticket gives you entry. That's what a ticket does. And therefore, from what I understood from this talk was that this side of heaven, I don't need Jesus. Because he's just my ticket when I get there. But the problem with that mentality is that God isn't a ticket, that doesn't work. It's almost the basis of all other religions. It's why Mormonism is so horrendously growing and growing so fast. It's so popular. Because that is a game of getting a ticket, getting a fast track to paradise. But this isn't a theme park. There is no fast track to paradise. It's why in Romans 3, Paul tells the church off for treating Jesus this way. Because in Romans, we can see that the church in Rome is acting as though they don't need to care, that they've got their ticket, and so it's all good. And so Paul reminds them, and in Romans 6, he says, you can be a slave to sin that leads to death, or be a slave to righteousness. Can you pop the slide up, Andy? Yeah? But Paul is trying to counter their thoughts and beliefs. Yeah, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to cause them to live in such a way that will change what's going on, because they're currently putting Jesus to shame. Augustine, a famous theologian, said, Jesus Christ is not valued at all until he is valued above all. Jesus Christ is not valued at all until he is valued above all. Because Jesus went through the mockery of a trial. He went through the mocking of Roman soldiers, the public display of his execution, the public rejection of those he sought to serve, and the ridicule of religious leaders. He was sent to be flogged, as you know. He was forced to wear a crown of thorns and carry his own cross to the place of execution. where he was nailed to that cross, and then the cross was dropped into the ground. He hung there for hours and then had a spear put through his side just to make sure that he was dead. And so we know that Jesus died in our place. But why would he suffer such a miserable death? Well, as you know, he did this to take the place for our punishment that we rightly deserved. And that's the gospel message, that he died to demonstrate the boundless love of God. That Jesus would rather have come down from heaven, lived and died, than to be without us. And that's an amazing truth. And then he was raised from the dead, an even greater truth in some respect. And we are called to believe that Jesus was raised from the dead and that he was given endless life from God the Father. Because Christ has given us a living hope by dying the death that we earned and showing us life through an empty tomb. Jesus probably would have seen the term Lord as referring to only to God. We can see he says that in other passages. And if a Jew believed in Jesus and claimed him as Lord, they were saying that Jesus was God. The Gentiles would have seen the term Lord in a different way. They would have applied that to an emperor as the source of total allegiance and loyalty. And so if a Gentile believed in Jesus and claimed him as Lord, they were proclaiming their commitment and total allegiance. But the simple fact is that the resurrection is the cornerstone of salvation, and without it, there is no reason for faith. Because we are called to believe, as I said, that he was raised from the dead. It's his resurrection that gives us life. Because he was exalted, and Jesus alone is Lord. And the Bible tells us that there is no authority that is above that which is given to Jesus. There is no position above that which is given to Jesus, and there is no power above that which is given to Jesus. He is above and beyond everything. And the Bible says, and we even sung it today, that one day at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow. And the concept of bowing is one of both worship and submission. It's an act of giving personal praise, but also declaring submission of personal will. Because every person, mind and body will bow. Every belief, creed, and religion will bow. Every man, woman, and child will bow. Jesus will be proclaimed. But until that day, we have to live here on the earth and reflect that he is Lord in our lives, because he isn't a fast-track ticket. And Paul, when he's talking about this, he compares that life to a long-distance race. Now, has anybody here in this room run a marathon? Okay, cool, so just me in this room then. I really only truly understood Paul's metaphor after I ran a marathon. And what I really learned from running a marathon is that preparation is key. I came out the marathon with an attitude that I could already run. I was a pretty good runner, just not at that distance. So I thought, well, this will be okay. I'll be fine with this. I think I signed up in the December. I think I was actually on my way to Northern Ireland. Randomly, I signed up for a marathon. And I had to run it in the May, I think. And in that time, I traveled to India twice and the States once. So it was a pretty busy period. So I started doing some long runs. I thought this will be good for me. So I started with 8 miles and then progressed up to 20 miles. They all felt pretty good. I could run 20 miles. I wasn't the fastest, but I was on track to run under 4 hours, which is a pretty good marathon time. And so in my head, I set myself a target. I said, I'm going to run 3 hours, 45 minutes. That's what I'm going to hit. And based on all the long runs I'd done, that was completely possible. That was doable within the time frame. And so on the day, I set off. Things were going well. Mile 5, things were good. Mile 10, things were great. Mile 15, felt like I could run all day. Mile 20 was a whole different ballgame. I got to mile 20, which was the farthest I'd run to that point, and all of a sudden, my breathing was heavy. My legs felt like absolute lead. I had no energy whatsoever. I had nothing left. And the next 6 miles I went through were torture. I was fighting with myself to keep running and not stop, because I knew if I did stop, I'd never get moving again. And I looked at my watch, and I knew that 3:45 was gone. There was no way I was going to make it, but 4 hours was still possible. And then 3 miles later, so with 3 miles left to go, they have these pacers in the race who run with balloons above their head, and they have timestamps on them, so the pacers run those paces so you can see roughly where you're at. 3 miles later, the 4-hour balloon man ran past me, and I knew the dream was over. I was devastated when I finished. I ran in 4 hours, 7 minutes, which was 7 minutes between success and failure, in my head at least anyway. I still ran a marathon, it's not that bad. But as I reflected on what went wrong, I realized the problem was that I hadn't done enough miles. So there's a quote that's this, and you pop it up on the screen. It says, "A marathon is hundreds of miles. The finish is the last 26.2. So a marathon is hundreds of miles, but the finish is the last 26.2. Because what had happened was I'd been lazy in my preparation. I'd done all the long runs, as you're supposed to do, but I skipped all the short ones in the middle that are there to prepare your legs whenever it gets tough, to give you that stamina that you're going to need later on. I thought if I could do the long ones, I didn't need to do the short ones. What was the point? And I was so wrong. And Paul here, he is describing it as being like running a marathon, like running a long race. That preparation is key. It takes hard work because there is no fast track. You cannot cut corners. Jesus should encompass all of who we are now. And that means living in such a way that we hold fast to our firmly held beliefs. Jesus is the way, he is the truth, and he is the life. There is no other option. Not because he is a fast track to paradise, but because he changes the now. Jesus lives in us by his Spirit, and that's huge, and we need to live like it is. I watched a movie not too long ago called Hacksaw Ridge. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a true story. If you haven't seen it, I'm about to ruin the movie for you, so you might want to turn off or something. I don't know how you do this when I'm speaking live. You pop this slide up for me, Andy. And in this movie, we hear the story of a private called Desmond Doss, who, because of his belief that it's a sin to murder, so he thinks he's going to be committing sin if he murders somebody, chooses to join the army as a medic, but not bear arms. So he refuses to carry a gun. And when you watch the movie, he goes through tremendous struggle. He's court-martialed for disobeying a direct instruction to pick up a weapon, and he's brutalized by his commanding officers. But he gets through all that. He sticks true to who he is. And then they're on Hacksaw Ridge, on this massive ridge, about to make their first advance against the Japanese. And as they advance over the top, it's absolute carnage. There are bodies everywhere. Entire platoons are being wiped out in droves. And so the order is called to retreat and come back off the ridge. But as Doss hears the order, he also hears from God. So God speaks to him, and Doss knows what he has to do. So he bravely ventures out into the carnage, finds a wounded man who's alive but not dead, and carries him back off the ridge. And as he finishes lowering this man down the side of a 20-foot drop, he hears God again saying, "One more." And so Dawson goes back into the danger zone, completely unarmed, and time again, he goes back and rescues another. Doss heard the voice of God and saved 75 lives during that battle. It's incredible, and he went on to win the Congressional Medal of Honor for his bravery. Because Doss had a belief that it was wrong for him to bear arms. Not a personal belief, but a belief that he held because he knew that God would never want him to kill another human. And even in the face of imprisonment, he held fast to that belief. And he went on to save 75 lives in the name of God. That's making Jesus alone Lord. And to me, that's so relevant to India right now, to the faith of Indian believers. Persecution in India is at an all-time high. Recently, another state passed one of the controversial anti-conversion laws, which makes it incredibly difficult for Christians to live out their faith. There's now 11 states in total with those laws. And we receive regular reports of violent attacks from our ministry partners, and yet the church in India is growing. Why? Well, because I believe that, as Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not stand against it, or shall not prevail, depending on which version you prefer. And our vision is to see the whole of India transformed through the love of Jesus. It's a huge place with over 1.3 billion people, and over 400 million of those live in areas where the gospel hasn't been shared, where there's less than 1% Christians. And that makes it one of the largest unreached nations on this planet. And that figure always shocks me. I've been there, I've seen it, and it just doesn't seem real. Uttar Pradesh, one of the largest states in India, home to the Taj Mahal. So it's got a ton of tourism, it's a pretty busy place. And yet over 90% of the people living in that area have never heard about Jesus. But the vast majority of the unreached are also living in poverty, and they're illiterate. And so that's where our work is focused. Because being poor in India is a massive struggle. You're struggling to put food on the table and support yourself and your family. Life's hard, but what's tougher is that you're living with the knowledge, with this guilt, that you're poor and you're in this position because in a previous life you were a bad person, that you were evil. And so there's this cycle of self-loathing and guilt which can't be broken. And that's why the message of grace in India is so powerful. The love of Jesus has the power to break that cycle. And that's why we're passionate about reaching the unreached and the poor in India with the love of Jesus. Because freedom from poverty is liberating. But freedom from the oppression and burden of sin is all life transforming. And as you know, we equip India's Christians to show the love of Jesus through 3 programs. Through church planter training, where we train church planters how to plant a church in 12 months. Adult literacy, where we give adults living in poverty the ability to read and write. And children's Bible clubs. We work with children and we share with them. And we work with our ministry partners to run these programs because our focus is and always has been indigenous. I'd be no good in India. I'm rubbish. I don't know the language. I'd probably die of the water within about a week. But our team in India are incredible. They go through so much and take so many risks to do the work they do. And so we don't send ministries. Instead, we train and resource local people to reach unreached towns and villages, bringing freedom from poverty, making disciples, and planting new churches. And last year, we saw a ton of new churches planted and more people coming to faith for the first time than ever before. And I want to share a quick video just to show you that. I said, so last year was an incredible year. And as a church, you have helped train and release a new church planter. And the result is new churches planted and new disciples welcomed into the kingdom of God. And although this project is finished per se, the new churches planted will continue to run because that's crucial to our model, that it becomes financially self-sustainable. That this church is now self-sufficient and able to carry on growing and plant more churches as they're supported by the tithes and offerings of the new believers, which means they can continue to grow and reach out to more people. And so through your support as a church, you're helping support another church planter. And so I know Steve already prayed, but please continue to pray for that church planter. Persecution continues to rise in India. Attacks by anti-Christian extremists are rising. And yet, our brothers and sisters in India, they're standing firm. They're not deterred. They're not asking us to pray for the persecution to stop. They're asking for great boldness to carry on and keep sharing the word. And so there are 3 ways that you can respond this morning if you want to get personally involved. If you want to stay in touch and receive updates about our ministry, you can head over to our website and you can sign up to our email list where we send out regular information about what's going on. We receive incredible testimonies from our team and they're so encouraging and we love sharing them with you. Also, if you want to find out a bit more about Mission India or go a bit further on your walk, we have this great devotional book. It's 40 Days of Prayer and it's written by our late founder, John DeVries. It's a fantastic book about helping you go deeper in your walk with prayer. So I've got a few copies here with me today. We don't sell them. We take a suggested donation of £5, but if that's too much, just take one for free. It's not an issue. It's a great book and a great, could be a great gift to give someone for Christmas as well, if you want to pass one on. But you can grab one of these from me or you can contact our office as well. And if you want to also get involved and you want to support our work personally, you can do that. Over 90% of our funding is from individuals in donations or gifts in wills. And just as an example, a gift of £16 could help one child be part of a Bible club for an entire year. These Bible clubs give children an education, offering a way out of poverty and introduce them to Jesus for the first time. I know quite a few of you do already support, and so I really appreciate that, and thank you so much for your support. I'm just going to close just with a quick word of prayer, just to pray for our ministry partners, and then we're going to sing the next song. Yeah, Father, I just